What's good, guys? Before I get into giving you the Bitcoin setup for the week, for the day, quick heads up, Blueprint is finally open after being closed for 3 months. If you've always wanted to learn my system and just apply it and start getting consistent with trading, then click the first link in the description box below. We're open for 2 weeks and then we're going to close again for another few months. And some of the results we've gotten for people over the last just couple of intakes has been already absolutely insane. So if you've been on the fence about it, stop thinking about it, check it out. But with that said though, before we get into it, if you're new here, welcome. My name is Shwen. I've been making these videos and publicly documenting the success rate of all of these Bitcoin calls for the last year and a half or so. And currently I'm at about a 75%-ish win rate. And you can actually scroll through and just look at all of the trade executions. And the reason I share that is that, if you're new here, just understand that you're in the right place because I tend to be right a little bit more compared to when I'm wrong. But with that out of the way though, let's actually get into the video. And kicking things off on the weekly chart, we closed last week with a bullish weekly bias, which is oftentimes you would think that this is a good thing, and in fact it is. And so the only concern that I have at the moment is that we're currently inside a bearish order block on the weekly chart. Now, I'm not saying that just because we're in here means that price is absolutely just going to dump from this point onwards, but I think it is a point of concern. Like, we should be really careful if the market, especially in the lower time frames, starts just dumping right away, then we're going to want to be careful of that. Because currently, yes, we are supposed to anticipate a bullish week, but we're currently in bearish higher time frame kind of structure. Although I share that not because this is going to affect the trading that we're going to be doing on a day-to-day basis. After all, there is a big difference between, trading based on the weekly chart, because after all, the model that I'm using is an intraday model, which means that I am entering and exiting my trades all within 2 to 3 hours max, usually. So a lot of what happens on the weekly chart, while it's good to just understand what the higher time frame is doing, it's not going to immediately affect the trades that we're going to be taking, right? So with that out of the way though, the other key level that I do want to mark out on the weekly chart is this high over here at 60,700-ish, 67,300, because this is the liquidity level that I think price is going to reach for, assuming things continue staying bullish. Then this bearish order block is going to get broken and we're going to hit the range high. And what do I mean by range high? Well, if I go down into the lower time frames, this will start making sense. So prior to this, we were in a range where this line right here, 67,300, was the range high, and this line right here at 59,167 was the range low. And if you understand anything about my trading system here, you will immediately come to understand the reason why the last couple of weeks has been so rough for Bitcoin trading, especially using my system, because we have been trading inside a range. Essentially, the best way that I can describe this is that this system that I've been using is what is known as a trend trading system. It means that when the market is moving aggressively, like for example, this entire dump right here, we made an inordinate amount of money, and those are perfect market conditions for the system that we're using. But when the market starts ranging and we get less volatility, that's when this system tends to struggle. So it's not to say that this is kind of like oh yeah, the system sucks or whatever. It's just the fact that there are usually two types of systems in the world. You have trend trading ones and you have range trading ones. And if you just by the very nature of optimizing towards one direction means that you are going to lose out on some of the benefits of the other direction. So when we're in a range, there are two things that I usually like to do. One is like to play it a little bit more safe. Just give you an example here. If usually I would be okay with 6 confirmations, well, now maybe I want to look for 7 or 8. So it's just to account for the fact that the market conditions, right, the playing field that you're playing in is already stacked against you. So you want to try your best to take trades where, as much as possible, you're maximizing your chances of success. Now, the second thing that I tend to do during times like this is I tend to be taking less risk on every trade that I do take. So yeah, I tend to be more selective. And when I do, get into a trade, I'm just overall just a little bit more caution. Not to say that, just because the market's ranging, we're not going to trade at all, but we just want to be a little bit more careful. So if you have been seeing either, less opportunities from my side, like last week, I think I took a grand total of 2 trades, and the other 3 days were no trades. And I think both of them, one of them ended up getting stopped at break even and the other one ended up being lost. Perfectly normal. If you take a look at the price action of last week, we literally went from 61,000 all the way up to 64,000. Just to give you an idea of how terrible this is in terms of how little volatility we got last week. This line right here, I want you to look at the number on the side here. It says $6,600. This is essentially the average weekly volatility from the low to the high of the weekly candle. So last week's weekly candle completely underperformed that because it was only about $4,000, which means it did not even hit the average expected amount of volatility. And so yeah, when there's no volatility, that's when the system struggles. This hopefully illustrates why. But anyways, getting down into the lower time frames, immediately we can see that we are currently trading towards the downside. We have the last, both Saturday and Sunday ended up closing bearish. Something stands out to me, which is that we have relatively equal highs right here at 64,700, and we have relatively equal lows right here. Now, this immediately tells me one thing. Now, Monday tends to be the setup day of the week, and potentially sometimes Tuesdays could be also setting up for a true move later during the week. Now, what this tells me is that we are currently also in a range within the range, right? Earlier on, I mentioned that if we zoom out like this, we have a range between here and here. Right now, we're also in a range between here and here. Yes, I know this is rangeception, but the market is like, to anyone that understands, like this is something that if you know, you know, but the market's always in a range. Every time you make a new high or make a new low, well, guess what? Now the new range low and range high is over here. So there's like, this is not the most like kind of scientific measure. Hopefully you get the idea. So now this immediately brings me on to the other thing, right? Based on the price action for today, I'm still possibly going to try a trade for today, but I think the biggest opportunities for the week, right? And one of the reasons why we did that initial weekly bias kind of read is because we are bullish on the weekly bias. We see the fact that we have multiple relatively equal lows over here that can easily be taken to form the low of the week before price expands towards the upside, right? So far, I think this, in terms of price action, is the trade that we go for. Now, besides that, if we take a look at news, we have news tomorrow, which is Tuesday. We have news on Wednesday, no news on Thursday and Friday. So what I am personally expecting is for Monday and the early hours of Tuesday, and potentially even all throughout Tuesday, to reach for this level right here at $61,300-ish. And once we take out these relatively equal lows, Wednesday is going to form the low of the week, and then price is going to head towards the upside. Now, if this sounds like a lot of like, oh, prediction, woo-woo, this is stuff that I have demonstrated time and time and time again. Like, there's been many weeks where I basically accurately called the top or bottom of the week, or just the overall kind of weekly profile. This is a concept known as Power of Three, and like, I'm not going to get too deep into this, too deep into that concept in this video, but just understand that it works. And obviously, if you want to learn the full system and every single like deep mechanism behind all of the concepts that I use, I want you to click the first link in the description box below and join Blueprint. Like, we're only open for 2 weeks, and then we're going to be closed again for the next few months. So get in while you can. Anyways, just moving forward, we also have a bunch of relatively equal highs over here. Now, before I move on though, I am going to talk about a invalidation scenario, because just because this is what I think is most likely to happen, and this is what I'm going to be looking for, it doesn't mean that this is the only way to play the markets for this week, because for all I know, you might just leave behind these relatively equal lows for, I don't know, the next few weeks. It's not like it's the first time we've seen something like this happen before, although as I say that, I kind of pull up an exact example of like relatively equal lows, and then the price sweeps this and off you go. But either way, like it's not absolutely out of this world if you were to just leave behind these relatively equal lows without tapping it. So in the event that price just ends up closing above this, actually this might not be too relevant for today. Let's say this here at 64,200. If price manages to close above this, then I would be interested to start flipping long. But just for today, I doubt that is going to happen, because in order to get all the way up to $64,000, well, we're going to need quite a lot of volatility. But secondly, we have left behind this bearish order block over here, which we are going to use to take a short. But to get to this level means that we have to break above this bearish order block, which is not likely to happen today. Not impossible, but highly unlikely. So for today, the setup, which is, finally we're getting to that kind of like drum roll moment. This is a bearish order block on the 1 hourly chart that I do anticipate in the event that you come back into this bearish order block starting at $63,700. You're going to be looking for a short, something along the lines of this, and then you're going to take it towards the downside. Now, would I recommend going like balls to the wall with this trade, where you go like full risk and, just be really aggressive and look for this? No. And the reason is because today is Monday, is also no-news Monday, which means that, again, the playing field that we're operating in right now is stacked against us. So we don't want to also go ahead and take trades that are super aggressive and put a lot of risk behind them, right? There's a correct time and place to do that. And that time and place is going to be Tuesday and Wednesday, because we're going to have multiple instances of USD red folder high impact news. Today is not one of those days, but if we do get this, it's still a valid setup. And the other setup that I will be personally looking for is a candle close beneath this level here on the 1 hourly chart, which is at 62,600. If you get a candle close here, this basically entire thing will turn into a bearish order block, and you can actually take a trade from this point onwards. And like, there is still a potential that you could just go off of a 5-minute CISD. Like, for example, considering that order flow is already bearish, if you get a 5-minute CISD, like for example below this level here at 62,900, and I know this is a lot of technical jargon, but for lack of a better word, I can't really explain this otherwise, because there are some essential concepts that you do need to understand in order to trade the system effectively, which I don't mean to be a party pooper or like some, sales pitcher or whatever, but like generally Blueprint will allow you to understand all of this and more, and just help you, just get results in your trading. But, with that said, if you do get a 5-minute CISD, this is still a very much valid setup. Entry here, stop above, and you target for 2R. The only concern that I would have with taking this trade at the moment is that you are not in the PD array, which is not even the biggest concern actually. It's the fact that, again, it's a non-news Monday. A lot of times we run into situations where even though the price action does, align, right? Everything in terms of price action checks out. We have a daily bearish bias, we have a bearish order flow on the 1 hourly chart, and we even have bearishness on the 5-minute. Plus we get a movement towards the downside. Like, just because every price action kind of criteria is present doesn't mean the trade is going to play out necessarily, because like you're operating inside a non-news day. Again, playing field's already stacked against you. So like, I would still, like, I'll definitely let you guys know on Twitter if I end up getting into this trade, but this is what I would personally be looking for, right? Just a break below here. Ideally, you get that 1 hourly candle close where the whole thing turns into a bearish order block. But again, that might be quite unlikely because, again, today's a non-news day. We're not really expecting too much volatility. Personally, I'm gonna actively actually look to sit this one out. Like, I haven't had too good results trading Monday. Just to give you an example, like so far I am documented around 200 trades or so, actually more than 200 trades at this point. And throughout, these 200 plus trades, I've had a pretty decent win rate, but the majority of my losses do come on Mondays, especially non-news Mondays, for the reasons that I've already explained. But either way, if I do get into anything, I'll definitely let you guys know. For now, I've got a dinner appointment I have to run to, and I'll see you guys on Twitter. Ciao, ciao.